All right, so what makes a property perform well or poorly? This is a question a lot of people ask. How do you know a deal is going to perform well? What are the things that actually sponsors that operate groups like that or operate apartments like this do that allow these properties to perform well and produce the type of returns that investors really hope for? So we're going to go over that in 3 easy steps. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to say is that in multifamily apartments and multifamily syndication, you get paid well to fix problems. And what I mean by that is that if there's a problem with the property, let's say vacancies are high or there's some issue with the property, if you can solve that problem, you typically get paid really well. Now, one common thing that we do is a value add approach where we come in and we find a problem and we fix it. One thing that we see a lot is basically coming in and renovating individual units. So when a tenant moves out, we'll typically come in, we'll put in a certain amount of money to typically $8,000 to $10,000, sometimes more, but basically come in, do the flooring, do some work in the kitchen and the bathrooms, really make that more attractive, and we'll see rent bumps as those new folks move in. So that's one way that we really help add value in a particular property. Another way is that, like I said, there are sometimes just particular problems. So with COVID, we had a deal in Oklahoma City where some tenants had basically squatted, and we were able to come in and do some work on just trying to get them caught up on their payments. And how we did that is through some of the government assistance. The prior owner did not know that this was something that was available for tenants, and so we came in and we were able to on their behalf apply for some of these payments that the previous owner didn't know was available. So we were able to get them caught up, and then at that point we gave them the choice, and we said, are you wanting to stay? Are you going to pay rent, or is it time to go? And so we were able to get some of those tenants out that didn't want to be there or just had stopped paying, and we're able to basically lease those up, do renovations, and kind of do all of that. So really, you get paid well to fix problems. This is not exhaustive, but I'm just giving you an overview of kind of how people get paid and how investors really get paid and how properties perform well. All right, so the second way that people and investors get paid well working with multifamily apartments is really by good management. It's a very common practice almost every time that whenever somebody comes into a property like this and starts working with it, takes over ownership, they'll almost always replace the management. And part of that reason is they want to try to see an optimization of just how things perform, how they're going, how the collections, the vacancies. If you have vacancies in your property, it's income that you're losing, right? So really good management will be really good at increasing income and really lowering expenses. So ways that we really work with, and we see good management is really, it's important not only that you have good property managers, but that you actually manage those managers. So you do site visits, you come out, you take a look at the property. Is there trash on the property? Are there any problems? Are there any areas that need to be addressed? Because typically we'll find that people that manage a property are not necessarily interested in the same level as the owner is to make sure that that property performs. So a lot of our job really is in the asset management side from a financial perspective to come in and make sure that the property performs in a way that it gives returns to investors according to the way that we projected it. So that's the second thing. All right, so the third reason that properties really perform well, in my opinion, is that when projections are actually conservative. So people use this term in investing, particularly real estate investing, and they'll say, oh, our deal's conservative, our deal's conservative. And then you look at the numbers and you're like, dude, that's not conservative. That's just not really, you're taking into really rosy assumptions. And if a deal doesn't perform, it's typically because people are not taking into account the fact that things don't always go according to plan, right? If you've ever owned any real estate, if you had a single family, you had a vacancy, you had a tenant, maybe trash your place, stuff can happen. So you have to take that into account. So what we try to do is we really try to, not take a best case scenario and not take a worst case scenario, but really be very modest. And there's 2 ways that really we try to do this, 2 major ways that are really easy to see when you're looking at a deal, if it is a conservative deal. The first is really looking at the rent growth assumptions. So for example, in Atlanta, if you're seeing 4 or 5% rent growth per year, which is not uncommon in certain parts of Atlanta, maybe even higher, we would rather take a much lower figure, kind of maybe 2 to 3% rent growth, going forward. So for the next 5 years, just 2 to 3% per year. Now that particular number, what you're assuming the rent growth is going to be, just by changing it from a 4 or 5% to a 2 or 3%, it can take a deal from a 25% annual return to like a 15% annual return. So our styles, we'd much rather under promise and over deliver. It also makes sure too that it allows for things that could go wrong in a deal, and just make sure that you're taking account for those type of things. So that's one thing. The other one is the cap rate at exit. So when you're selling property, let's say we're buying a property like this at a 4.5% cap rate, which just has to do with how much income you're getting for how much you're paying for the property, then you want to raise it up at least 50 basis points if it's a 5-year hold. So that means that would be like a 5% cap rate. So you're basically saying that we're being conservative, that's saying that it may not be as favorable to sell this in 5 years when we want to sell it. So again, being very conservative is really, really important because it allows for things to not go according to plan. If vacancies are higher, more expenses come up. But when deals perform well, it's typically because different sponsors or operators have been very conservative on the front end just to make sure that this deal is going to perform. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video on how multifamily deals perform and how they do well. I'd love to see below in the comments, what are some things that you'd like us to talk about when it comes to multifamily investing? Thanks for taking the time to educate yourself. Look forward to seeing you on the next video.